Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McClernand, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion during the live stream. And we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, welcome back to another episode of Between the Before and After. You know, because this is a live broadcast, sometimes I actually get sucked into watching my own intro video and forget to put us back in the studio. That's happened to me a few times, but I remembered this time. So it's not just a blank screen as the show starts.
I saw that video comes up and I'm like, oh, John's wearing a different shirt. And then I had to go, oh, no, this would have been pre-recorded. Silly.
It was.
So this is my intro shirt. And then this is my video.
Yeah. It's like one of those people who change in a phone booth or that there's whole shows around it. I think they're called quick change.
Yeah.
It's like where
incredible talent.
Yeah, where they throw up a blanket or a sheet or something like that. And as the sheet drops, they're in a whole other outfit and things like that. That's incredible.
Magic. Totally.
Yeah. Well, you actually do help people a slightly different way, maybe not as rapid change. I think the changing that happens is probably a little more, you have time, you're not rushed through it and whatnot. So I'm actually going to let you introduce yourself because I think we do better. Well, you know yourself better than I do as of yet, but we're going to explore your story today. But why don't we let people know who you are, where you're at today, and what you're up to. And then we're going to start digging into how you got here.
Yeah, sure. Sounds great. I am Sheena Johnson. I am part owner of the Bra Lounge. You're coming at you right now from a corner of our fitting rooms because I didn't have quite enough time to rip home and we wouldn't have wanted me at home. There's children there. This is a much quieter spot to do this.
Yeah.
We recently celebrated 15 years in business, which is still a weird reality that we're getting used to. The years fly by faster, I think, every one that goes by. Yeah, gosh, I think we'll start. Yeah, I mean, we started 15 years ago here, but that story goes back a little earlier than that. So that we'll go there.
Yeah. Well, so and you started this business with your sister.
Yeah.
And your sister is slightly younger than you, I gather.
Yeah, 18 months, 20 months ish.
Okay. Yeah. There's 14 months.
Live. 25 months. Does months matter? Just over 2 years.
Yeah. We'll just say 2 years. That's good enough. So, and have you and your sister, you have two sisters, is that right?
I have a sister and a brother.
A sister and a brother. Okay. Two siblings then. Sorry.
Yeah.
There we go. And your brother wasn't interested in being a part of the business?
You know what's funny? He has been.
Oh, that's right.
At times. That's right. When we had our men's online store, Twig and Berries, he was a part of that
right.
for a couple of years, which was a lot of fun. He lived in Saskatchewan at the time, so he would fly or drive over and spend, do a market with us or whatever. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool having him involved. And that time went on. He ended up moving on, which was wonderful for him. But it was a lot of fun. I knew at the time that we would cherish that time together for sure.
Yeah. So, and you as siblings are all, I imagine, quite close.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah, which is really special. And I know part of the reason and what we're going to share with today is kind of your story. Going back to you, so you grew up in Alberta. Are you Alberta born and raised?
Yes, I am.
And where in Alberta did you grow up?
I grew up. Was born in Didsbury.
Okay.
Lived in Crossfield. Yeah, not far from here for sure. Lived in Crossfield for a few years till I think I started kindergarten in Crossfield, and then we moved to Sundre. We were in Sundre from grade 1 to grade 8. I was there 10, 12, I don't even know how many years that is, 10 years. And I'm terrible with numbers today. Put me on the spot. And that's
yeah. What's 32 plus 13?
Yeah. Don't ask me math. No math today. And then at 14, that was our the first big thing happened when I was 14. And that was moving from Sundre up north of Grand Prairie to Fairview, which was at the time, that's 26 years now or so. At the time, there was only one highway north. Now it's divided most of the way. So it's a much easier ride. But I remember feeling like we were moving to Timbuktu. It was the end of the earth as far as I was
Yeah.
concerned. It was forever from my family or friends. It was a long way away.
Yeah, no kidding. And you were 14 at the time, so it's like you're leaving behind everything that you know, and sort of being uprooted and being dumped into a remote community where, and remote communities can be kind of a mixed bag of experience. I mean, I grew up in a small town, and it's
Yeah.
like, and I say I grew up in a small town. I was plunked into there when I was 9 years old, and again, it was like
Mm,
I always felt a little bit like an outsider because I wasn't born there, didn't grow up there, didn't have the same connections that people had, and I wonder if that
yeah.
was kind of your experience getting plunked into this place.
It absolutely was. You felt, I remember feeling I was a really insecure kid for sure. So I remember thinking like this was going to be the worst thing possible. I had finally grade 6 and 7 and 8. I had some really great core group of friends. We were just starting to get some independence, right? School
Right. Yeah.
dances. And I grew up in the country. So going to town and spending time in town was a big deal when we were kids. And so moving to a new town was really overwhelming. But I also really remember I think that's probably the first experience in my life that sort of forced me to find the bright, like find the silver lining. What good is going to come out of this? What can I do to make this easier for myself? And I remember starting to realize that I could sort of be whoever I wanted to be, and
Mm.
and just depending, all of a sudden, I was the kid who talked too much. I was the kid who asked inappropriate questions sometimes. I was absolutely that child. And that sort of haunted me. Like I lived with a lot of shame with being like, I couldn't trust what came out of my mouth for a really long time. And that was real. Like I remember being like, you don't have any business having an opinion here because, you're going to say something stupid or embarrass someone or hurt someone. And I remember being really, really conscious of my thoughts and my words. So I remember moving up there and realizing that they didn't know any of that about me.
Right. Yeah, this is
You know?
pre-internet too.
Yeah. Oh God. Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
know. I often think the same thing, right? I try to keep I'm trying to keep my kid off the internet. Like, he doesn't know how to use it anyways, but I mean, like in terms of photos and things like that. Like, I don't want him to be aware that it exists other than making, video calls to family overseas. But,
yeah.
um, yeah. So you realize that I can kind of reinvent myself a little bit and be who I want to be. Who was it that you decided you wanted to be in that
Well,
moment?
and I think that that's what was funny. I don't think I really became anyone different except that in my own heart, I knew that all of those pre-existing beliefs about me
Mm,
weren't there. So I think I
right.
had more confidence. Like I would say that
Yeah.
I was a little more cautious. I was a little more, I also, that experience helped me to learn how to be my own best friend. And I say that all the time now as like it's such an important to learn who you are and to learn what you like. Growing up in Sundre, you were with this group of people that you'd been with your whole life, and
Mhm.
you sort of, right, you sort of mold into what the group is. And I started
Yeah.
realizing that that's not, I could be, and not to say anything was wrong with that, but it was a great
Right.
group. But it was just, I could sort of decide who I wanted to be. And it did give me confidence. It gave me, it also let me stay, what's the word? Like it let me stand back. I didn't care about being accepted as much because, in my opinion, first of all, I wasn't going to stay there forever because my heart
Right.
was
Okay.
in the country.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't care about building relationships. I mean, I wanted to make some friends, but I just didn't care as much. I spent more time on the farm alone. I spent way more time with my horses, with my brother and sister. It was like that pressure of being a social creature was not as important anymore. Whereas in Sundre, I would have ditched everything for to go with my friends, anytime. So it was just, it's not that I reinvented myself. I just started almost learning what I wanted, what I
Right.
thought, and I didn't really listen too much. I didn't have a lot of friends yet, so I didn't have those influences, right? And the different
Yeah.
pressures.
Did you stay in touch with any of your friends back in Sundre at that time?
Yeah, I was still very close with them. I was on the phone, and I think that that was why I could spend my hours on the phone with someone and
Mm,
not
yeah.
care what was going on in Fairview. If I missed the latest party, it didn't bother me. I was 15. I wasn't allowed to go out, and my mom always had these rules of like, you never get in a vehicle with somebody. I need to know where you are, right? And those started being a little more important to me. Whereas in Sundre, where we knew everybody, that wouldn't have bothered me. I would have been more carefree, right? But I
Right.
had
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be a little more guarded. I had to be a little more aware of my surroundings because it was new. And
Yeah.
I didn't you didn't know everybody, so you didn't just take what they said at for face value. I became friends with people for sure, but it took me a while to really establish close relationships.
Mm-mm. And it's really interesting. And now I'm picturing, did you have like one of those phones with like the really long cords as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Where you can, take the phone and like go far away, and yeah.
Yep.
Um, what kids these days miss out on by being born with the internet?
That 3 minutes of a
Yeah.
commercial break where you got to go upstairs and get a snack and refill your drink and get like
Yeah.
so many things.
Yeah. So, but then this is where your story takes a bit of a turn, or not just a bit of a turn. That's downplaying. It takes a very, very significant turn. So, you're 15 years old in a new community. How long had you been there at this time?
So we moved in July of 96.
Yeah.
I started grade 9 in September. Met a boy and became his girlfriend, which in my opinion at the time was my opportunity. He was a nice boy. Other boys or other girls in my class were like, yeah, I knew him. I didn't know him at all. I knew his name. He was really nice to me at the first dance that we were at. And nobody had ever done this to me before. He offered to get up off the chair and let me sit. And I was like, ew, what? No, that's okay. That's fine. And that was our first interaction. And I remember being like, boys don't do nice things like that. Since when? I grew up with a bunch of us. We're boys, girls. We were all the same. We didn't care. And the guys treated the girls the same because it was this really great group of just people. We were all really close. We grew up together. So having this initial interaction with this boy who seemed so considered, I was like, oh, what's this about? Anyways, came his girlfriend, knowing nothing about him, and we are married and we've been together 25 years, and that's a whole other story.
Well,
so anyways,
that's how it started then.
Yeah,
high school
I was like,
sweetheart.
well, this is an all right way of me making friends. He seems nice. Let's try
This was in Fairview.
This was in Fairview. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So here you are going up to like what feels like the middle of absolute nowhere. Thinking this is the end of my life, and not realizing that you're going to meet someone who's going to become like your life partner.
Totally. I mean, there's so
That's
much
beautiful.
Serendipitous components to this story, I think. And I think everybody has those moments. And at the time you would have never dreamt, right? There was no way.
Right.
But here we are. So we start kind of boyfriend, girlfriend in October. And yeah, he's very nice. He was very nice. He continued to be a gentleman. And anyway, so February came. It was the end of December, end of January, just before my birthday. And it was minus 50. I remember that just experiencing that cold north winter was something else.
Yeah.
And our barn caught fire and burnt down.
Oh.
So that was trauma number 1. Well, trauma number 2, I guess, in that full year. So we lost. I was a barrel racer, and I was supposed to have been out that night with my horse. So my horse was supposed to be in the barn that night. Turned out last minute, I was mad and I had so much homework. I couldn't make it happen. So I turned her out and I didn't bother. So thank God she wasn't in that fire. But we lost our little herd of goats. We lost some cats. And anything that hadn't been unpacked from the move, 7 months earlier, was in there in boxes. So I remember going through, just my parents having to go through thank God that's the only experience with fire I have, but that's the only one I ever want to have. Fires are, what a terrible loss. Like it's so much loss. So that was I was shocked having that kind of, I remember walking through the night. I got up through the night. It was about midnight to go to to get a glass of water. And I remember I was in the basement. My bedroom is the basement. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, and there was a light behind me. This little outlet had a little orange light on it. And I remember sitting, I was, groggily, and I'm drinking my water, and I'm sitting there looking out the window to the barn. And I jumped and thought I saw fire, but it was this light behind me. And I'm, oh goodness, thank goodness. Okay, whatever. So I finished my water, went back down and went to bed. And I had just fallen asleep. And I remember hearing boom, 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 people moving. My dad was yelling, my mom was yelling. And I came running up the stairs, and it was an hour later, and the barn was completely engulfed. Ooh. And I remember my mom saying, the goats, like, we got to go. The goats are in there. And my dad was, there's nothing we can do. You are not going anywhere near that. They're gone. So I remember that just being like such a traumatizing and scary situation.
Yeah, you feel like really powerless in that situation.
Horrific. I remember going to school the next day. We ended up going to school the next day because mom and dad just had too many things to manage, and being like, our barn burned down last night, and people were like, oh, that's terrible, and not really thinking about it. But for me, it was like we lost so much. We lost our pets. It was awful. It was awful.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, though, I think those little traumas,
they were laying some of the groundwork or helping you to go through some difficult experiences and losses to kind of emotionally prepare you for what was to come. It. So then, and at this time, your boyfriend, is his name Mike? Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was he like through this?
I remember him being just shocked and stunned and so sorry. And he would come out, he would ride his bike. We lived 20 minutes out of town, so he'd ride his bike. He rode his bike everywhere, and he'd ride his bike way out there before he got his license. And yeah, I remember going out with my dad, having the goats in the back of the truck and having to go and take them to a dump, or I don't remember what we did with them. And I remember this disconnect of like, these were our pets and I loved these creatures so much, and now this is all that's left of them. It was just a really surreal experience. And I remember Mike always being very he's a man of few words, but he was always so supportive. He was always just, he lived in town and he was an only child. So I swear he only dated me because I had a farm and quads and, cool stuff out in the country that we could do. But he was there. He was there every weekend. He was there all the time with us. It was funny. My mom really liked Mike, and he was 6 months older than me. So she'd say, bring him out. She always wanted him to be a part of our lives. Bring him out for supper. And so my dad is Mike. So we would say my Mike and your Mike, or my dad and my Mike, and all these things. And anyways, I remember she'd say, come on, Mike, have a beer. Do you want to have a beer with me? Let's have a beer. And I was never allowed to have a beer, but Mike was allowed to have one beer at 16. So it was neat because I remember the December before the accident, or days before the accident, the end of November. It was winter. It was lots of snow on the ground already. My grandma and grandpa, her mom and dad, were visiting us for the week. And Mike he was 16 now, and now had his first little Ford truck. And that truck was his everything. And we had to do dishes after dinner. So we're standing at the kitchen or at the sink doing dishes, and out in the field, you can see through the window, his truck goes peeling out of our driveway. And he's like, who's in my truck? He's freaking out. And it's my mom, and she's a farm girl. She knows how to drive stick shift. She knows. And I think my grandma was with her. They jumped in his truck and they were doing donuts out in the middle of the field just to stress him out, like so good. And he's like, does she know what she's doing? Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh dude. Yeah.
That's funny.
So good. Man. So funny.
What a good joke to play too. Like that's. Did you know they were going to do this?
No. I wasn't surprised at all. I'm like, oh, that's definitely my mother out there. No,
right.
My mom was a jokester. My mom was pranks and teasing and all the time. So she wanted to give him a little heart attack.
Oh, that's awesome. She probably, I wonder if she saw something when, like, with you two in a relationship. Did I don't know if sometimes moms know or whatever, they have this premonition that, like, hey, you're with a really good guy. Did she ever give any indication in that direction?
At the time, so being 15, I think she really liked him for sure. But we were too young for a serious relationship. Like, she didn't mind. Mm-hmm. She knew this was going to be a thing. Boys were going to come into my life.
Sure. But
she made sure that she stuck her nose in all of our business. But no, I think that she would have been like, you really need to be like an independent woman. You need to, do the things that feed your soul and don't do just what you want to do as a couple. And that's been something that's sort of guided me since her death, right? And just that, what would mom hope for me? And knowing how much she loved him is a nice, it's heartwarming to know that was good for her. But it's also important, and it changes how I raise our girls now, in that, it's special to have a companion, but don't let it sway you from who you are and what you love. And so that's something I talk to my kids about too. For us, I think the circumstance Mike and I are in is very different than the great majority. And a few traumas in those first years of life really just stuck us, it just, it solidified what that needed to be for us. But I don't think that should be everybody's norm at all.
Right. Yeah. And so you mentioned the accident, and this is kind of like obviously the one of the most devastating things you had to go through in December of was it 1997?
97, December 1st. Yeah, 97.
Yeah, and there was an accident. And your mom was killed.
Yeah.
And do you remember much about that day prior leading up to it or anything?
Every minute. Yeah, I remember every minute. My sister was having, I think it was a volleyball game. It was a kind of a volleyball wind up, like parents against the kids. It was kind of supposed to be what was going on. And so the plan was she didn't work that day. She worked part-time in town. So she didn't work that day. So she was going to meet us in town after school, and we were going to go for pizza, and then we were going to go to the gym and then do this volleyball wind up. And of course I didn't have to be a part of this, but because being in town meant seeing Mike.
Right. Yeah.
And for sure I'm going to be in town, and he was going to come for pizza with us. So I remember our school went from 9 a.m. till 3:25 or 3:30. And I remember looking at the clock when we were in social class, and I remember looking at the clock at 3:14, 3:15 and thinking, okay, 10 more minutes. Like I was so ready to be over this day and go for pizza.
Right. Yeah.
And that would have been the exact, right close to the exact time that she was hit.
Yeah.
And I think about that often of just even that moment of what's the meaning behind that I would have literally looked at the clock in that same moment. Right. So the rule was in our little town, there were 3 schools. There was our school, which was a K to 12. And then there was a public, we were in Catholic school. Then there was a public elementary and a public high school. So our buses would go to each school before they left town. So the rule always was, if I'm not, because my mom was always in a rush, always running late, always like the same human being I am now. And that was the rule. If I'm not at your school, then watch for me at each of the other schools. If you see the car, jump off the bus and come with me. So she's not at our bus. And I remember Courtney and Cody, I remember someone saying, well, why don't you just stay, like, don't get on the bus. She's coming. And no, I got to obey the rules. Like, let's get on the bus and see if she's at another school. So we went to the other school and no, don't see her. And then we went to the third school and I was like, hey, now I'm annoyed. You're going to be late. We don't even have to leave. Like, we shouldn't even be leaving town. And I felt a little bit anxious of like, oh crap. It was a pain. Living in the country is a lot of driving back and forth. And I'm like,
right. Yeah.
We be on the bus. We better be on the bus. That's the rule. Let's stay on the bus. It is what it is. But as we were crossing Main Street from school number 2 going to school number 3, ambulances and fire trucks and all, like, we had to wait for this convoy of vehicles to go flying out of town. And it was a super small town. So right away you think, oh no, that sounds terrible. I hope it's okay. You kind of have a moment, and then off we went to the third school. She wasn't there. Got all the way home, and I'm calling Mike because obviously, hey, we're at home now. She's not home. She's supposed to be home. I don't know when we're going to get to town. A little irritated, 16, 15-year-old.
Sure. Yeah.
Irritated with change of plans. And I remember he was working on his truck. He was putting a stereo in his truck. And I remember turning around. I had the phone in my hand. And I said, okay, so I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know when we come to town. And as I turned around to say goodbye and hang the phone up, there was a police officer in our driveway. And so Courtney and Cody and I are home alone. Dad's not around. Mom's not around. And I said, oh my God, there's a cop in a driveway. And he goes, oh, well, don't worry about it. Like,
yeah.
Call me right back. And so sure enough, this police officer comes in and he says, I'm looking for your dad. And I said, oh, he's not here. And it's funny how your brain, there's a reasonable explanation for all of this, right? Always there's a reasonable explanation. No, there's something happened to a neighbor. They just want to talk to my mom. And so of course we had a cell phone, and it was the big box,
the big brick,
thing. But I said, my mom has a cell phone. Do you want to call her? And he said, no, I need to get hold of your dad, or I'm looking for your dad. And it turned out my dad had the cell phone. So I don't know. I don't even remember who he called. I don't know how I gave him a number to get a hold of my dad somehow. Ended up on the phone with my dad. And then he said, I'll never forget. Hi, Mike, it's Constable Friesen from the Fairview RCMP. Just letting you know your wife's been involved in a very serious car accident. I'm here with your kids. They're home alone and I need to know who to call.
Oof.
And we just, I remember Courtney and Cody losing it. I remember someone started yelling really loud and I'm like, he's on the phone, be quiet. Like, yeah. So I sent them to their rooms and I remember walking back down the hallway and I was close. I had my arms crossed like this and I was shaking. I remember my body was just shaking. And I remember looking at myself and going, oh my God, that's something my mom does all the time. She would cross her arms like that. And I remember that was one of the first times that I remember being like, oh my gosh, I'm just like my mom. This is something that my mom would do. So I was walking down the hall and got back to him. He ended up getting phone numbers for neighbors and people we could call. And I remember being so, I said something about, how could this be? How is this, how would happen? Her car was hit by a train. Her car was hit by a train 2 kilometers from our house. Oh, and man. The strange thing is our bus never took that road. Our bus always went a back way. So thank God we hadn't been driven right by it. But yeah, so I mean, I was just stunned and I'm thinking, well, yeah, but people live through these things all the time. So it's fine. Like, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out. And so then I remember our neighbors pulling up, getting word. Of course, now it's been half an hour.
Small town, yeah.
Everybody in town. Our neighbors were nurses. They had been working that day. There's just one thing after another. So neighbors started coming up. But I remember the police officer going back out to his car and bringing her purse into the house. And I remember thinking, why do you have that? Why would you have that? She should have that. Why would you need that? So how did it go? I think the neighbors said, get in the truck. I think we went to their house for an hour or two while they decided what to do. The plan was to airlift her from Fairview to Edmonton. Mm-hmm. And so my dad got to Fairview. He worked way on the other side of town and was a gas operator. So he was all over the countryside. So he went straight to the hospital and met her, met the doctors. And then our neighbors drove the 3 of us into the hospital as well. They thought that they would take us straight down to Edmonton, but we decided to all go to the hospital. So that hospital was a pretty, it was a weird night. I remember I had been there a lot. My mom worked at the hospital. My mom worked as a nurse's aide in the nursing home. So it was, lots of people were just, I think looking back, you saw all these people with these horrific faces. Like they were all just like, and I'm like, we're going to Edmonton. We're going to get all the help we need in Edmonton. This is fine. We'll figure this out. Anyway, so they got her in the plane. I don't even remember that. My dad was going to fly with her. The neighbors were going to drive us to Edmonton. And we got to the north side of Peace River, I think. So about an hour down the road, and got a phone call. And it was silent. I remember this little minivan being silent. And I think me and Cody were in the middle and my sister was behind us. And they got the call. And so I hear them talking quietly to each other. And then he pulls a Yui on the highway. And I went, oh, awesome. Like we don't even have to go to Edmonton now. This is great. And then they said, no. So
she didn't make
home. Didn't make it. Drove home. So that's an hour that I remember just being like, what does this mean? Right. Just trying to imagine what that would look like for us now.
How do you process that? Especially like such a young mind, really, like trying to fathom this, because, in life, I think we don't, like, none of us go into life with this expectation. Like we have this idea of how it's supposed to look. Yeah. They're there and they're there. They've seen my graduation, the wedding, the special moments in life. That's sort of, and so all of that's kind of being stripped away. And in your mind, you're just churning, trying to process, you
can't even picture, like, you can't even, like, what does this mean? Like, I remember just being like, this is impossible. This was hard 2 days ago before when we were just living through that hard. And now we have this whole new reality. It numb. I mean, the only word you can use is numb, right? Just completely stunned. And then getting home, my dad was, the house was full of people. My dad was a wreck. And then we could just sort of fall apart. Once we got home, we could kind of fall apart.
Just start letting the emotions out, I guess maybe the one good thing about being in a small town is probably a lot of supportive people that want.
Oh, they came from everywhere, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the week before, or the month before Christmas, there was that week, there was like the Festival of Trees in town. So there was lots of Christmassy things that were starting to gear up. And I remember getting so many donations of Christmas things, like Christmas trees. People bought us trees for the house, and people, I mean, certainly my mom was a very outgoing woman. She had already met half the town. She'd already made great friends. Anyone that I was friends with, their parents were all there. Like, yeah, I mean, we stayed home I think we stayed home for the week, and then her funeral was in Saskatchewan, in her hometown. So we were home for that week, and it was just my grandparents had just been there, and they just did the zipping around the field in the truck, and they had literally just gotten home and stayed a night and pretty much, and then got this awful phone call. So they were back on a plane and came right back up. They were there right away. But the neatest thing was people from Sundre literally that night got in their truck, met us, came like 3 a.m. I was asleep in bed, and Marcel, our Marcel, my dad's good buddy Marcel, comes flying through the door, and Sheena, and hugging us, and it was just, it was a weird comfort, like just to know that regardless, these people were going to come to us. And we were 10 hours away. I don't know how they even drove. He stopped at a Zeller's on the way to pick up teddy bears and stuff for us. There's so many people that just dropped everything to come to us. So for sure, it was beautiful. But then we flew to Saskatchewan. My wonderful man hopped rides. He was told if he left school, he would be suspended. He wouldn't be allowed to come back, or he'd be in trouble if he left school to go to the funeral. And that was fine with him. Yeah. He left anyways. He drove with my aunt and uncle, who he didn't know. My aunt was pregnant, and they drove, God, 25 hours. I don't know how long. It was so long. They drove to get there. And excuse me.
That's good.
And he dropped everything to be there too, and then we were in Saskatchewan for, I don't even know, a week or so. He wouldn't have stayed that long. I can't remember who he ended up driving home with or flying home with. But then we were not in a rush to get home. We were
yeah.
Oh, it's funny. I was thinking about this. I don't even know who looked after our animals. Like Dad must have had neighbors stopping in. Like it was just this weird blimp of time where time just stood still, right? I had no idea all the many components working around us to make something happen. Anyways, we drove, someone had drove our van. We flew, but someone had drove our van all the way to Saskatchewan. So we had it there with us, and then we took a long way home, and we went through Sundre, and we saw some old friends, and we took a long way home. But it was about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I can't even remember how long before we got home. So now we're just before Christmas, and that was tough. That was tough.
Because in the beginning, there's the initial outpouring of support as everybody's shocked and realizing you're going through this devastating thing. And it's beautiful how, a community of people come together to provide support. But, that level of support can't be sustained forever in that sort of capacity. So then you go,
life goes on, right? Life goes on for so many people. Yeah.
And so you get back home, and that's when it sinks in, maybe even more for real, because now you're back at home where she would have been. And there's so many memories. And every time you walk into a room and you think about this.
Well, now we have to start living. Like now we have to figure out who cooks, right? Who buys groceries, I started being overwhelmed with how much she did. I didn't realize that she had been woven into every conversation, every plan, everything. She was the heartbeat of it. She was the one calling the shots. She was the one pulling the strings. She was the one making the arrangements. So I feel like that was just, you go through those days of like, I didn't support her enough, right? With how much she had to manage.
Right. Yeah.
How were we not better to her? It really felt like she got the short end of the stick.
Yeah. And yet when she was alive, she probably never would have made you feel that way.
No, she was just a 39-year-old woman living, raising 3 kids, working, running a farm, busy, just living her life.
Yeah. So, and through all of this, I mean, I think it's amazing that you had Mike there with you. I mean, you must have had some pretty tough days, and just thinking about how did he support you in that? Because I mean, of course, he's 16 years old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, thrust into this, I mean, how long had you guys been together at this time?
Well, the day she died, we'd been together a year and a month.
Okay, yeah. So you had a pretty good relationship going with that. Like, I mean, for teenagers, that's like actually a pretty
Already long.
a pretty long relationship, you know. But still, then this dynamic is sort of thrust into the relationship, and that could have really, torn things apart because, I imagine part of you wants to withdraw and run away and hide and not feel things and so on. And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, that was hard because my dad, when he went back to work, he was able to take a lot of time off. But when he was very much like, I need to work, I need to get this family going. So
Hmm.
that's sort of, and that was his grief. That was his reaction. He needed to work to keep busy.
Yeah.
Um, so Mike and we did a lot together. I mean, we took the kids, my brother and sister, one had hockey and one had baseball, and we would take them there, and we would the four of us became the thing. My dad was he worked away, not away. He worked oil field, so he wasn't
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
He was home every night, but he worked long hours. So he was gone first thing in
Right.
the morning till later at night. And then it wasn't long after, it was about, no, I don't even think it was a year after her death, he started his own company, and we moved again to Grand Prairie.
Okay.
Well, I only ended up living in Fairview, I think 3 years, I guess, grade 9. Yeah, grade 9, 10, and 11. And then going into grade 12, we moved to Grand Prairie. So Mike, I mean, yeah, what did he do? Gosh, he stood silently right beside me all the time. He was at every, my grandma would say, I've never met a more patient boy in my life, where he would just sit and he'd wait for me to be done, dishes or supper or homework, and he was just always there. Just being there was all I needed. Just
Hmm.
that one solid person that I could, cry to or whatever. And even to Courtney and Cody, he became their brother even
I was
overnight.
gonna say, yeah, like, yeah, just a big brother watching over them. So I imagine again, probably a fairly close relationship to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I mean, and especially for him, he didn't have siblings. He's an only child.
right.
So our
Right.
family very quickly became his family for sure. Yeah. I mean, but
Right.
having said that, there was also a lot of hard times. Like there were times where it was Friday night and he just wanted to go to the damn party tonight. And I'm like, I'm not going. I'm
Right.
not. So there was a lot of that too. I had to grow up, and he didn't have to grow up in that way. He didn't have to
Yeah.
become a dad to these kids. So it
Yeah.
was hard. It was, and I always felt like my dad was very afraid. My dad was very like, you're not driving to town. You're not going anywhere. You need to be home. But then
Yeah.
he would sleep. My dad is if when things are hard, he sleeps.
Right.
So we were often home, and if he was home, he was sleeping, and it would be like, well, I could have gone. I could have gone to be with my friends. So it was always I always felt stuck between just wanting to be 16, just wanting to be 17, and knowing that that's just not, those aren't
Yeah.
the priorities anymore. It's just not the life you can live. And even when when I did go out, I wasn't much of a drinker. It was far more important to me to make sure we got home safe. It really took a lot of the fun out of life, of course. Nothing's fun.
Yeah.
Everything had really dire consequences, right? All of a sudden, do you understand that?
The cost, potential risk of this, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it really. I could see how that would happen.
yeah.
And yeah, that's quite something to go through. So, uh, you graduate high school, and where'd you go from there?
So we graduated. Yeah, I graduated in Sexsmith. Mike, Mike was in. Once we moved to Sexsmith, he was just in Sexsmith all the time. Anyways, he would go to Fairview for the week at school, and then he'd be back with me in Grand Prairie and Sexsmith.
Hmm.
And I think we moved out. My dad started his oil field company, so Mike ended up working for him ended up
Okay.
working for him for about 10 years.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And that helped. That was like my dad, like, you need to be here then, because she's not going to keep going to Fairview. She needs to be here. So I guess you can come here too. So,
Yeah.
so we ended up living at my dad's for a while. And I think we rented a room in town, a guy that I knew, and we rented his place. And I think that only lasted a month. That was our first rental experience. That only lasted a month. We were like, we can't afford this. This is crazy. Went back home for a little while. And then we got our own place. What would that be? 2001,
Yeah.
2001. And got our own apartment. And he ended up this was in Grand Prairie. He ended up getting an apartment with a friend, and I ended up moving back to my dad's to go to college. I did some college courses, and then we moved out then we were back in the same place again, and we ended up living in a house with the two of us, and then two roommates, two of our good friends. And those years were tough. 18, 19, 20, 21. I think learning how leaving my brother and sister was really hard. That was leaving them. My dad he was in a new relationship, and that was okay. But it was so different. Like, it was just like, there was just so many things that was just so, he was living this totally different life now, right? With totally different friends in a totally new town. And he was oil field, so he was staying really busy, and he was pulled into different meetings. My dad was busy. He lived a very different life. And then we were kind of sort of floundering, just kind of figuring out where we all fit in, right? And that I hate those years. I really hate those years. And I know that they were a big part of the journey, and it's fine. I don't know which was harder, the years right after she died or the years after I moved out. Both of those were.
Yeah. How did your siblings cope with this? Because you were the oldest, so you kind of get basically like plunked into the mothering role, where now you're taking care of them. Your sister is 2 years younger, and how much younger is your brother?
He's 6 years younger than me, 4 years younger than Courtney. So
right, okay.
Cody was always very I think Cody has had to process his trauma as an adult. He's had to deal with a lot more of that. He was, I remember he was 9. So mom died, and Cody turned 9 2-3 weeks later, right after her funeral.
Right.
And that's a tough time. I remember him like just not really grieving, not really, not crying, and I remember being so afraid that he's never going to remember her. He's going to move on so easily and because he didn't have to deal with the weight afterwards, I guess. But his hard came later. Having a family made it harder for him. He's had to go through, and they're in a great place. His wife's amazing. So he's gone through a lot of coping now. He's had to learn a lot of that processing now. Courtney too. Courtney and I grieved more together because we were closer in age. I was always, even before mom died, I did the chores. I was out with the animals, and Courtney made dinner and helped with dishes and stuff. So we were already kind of a good team that way. She had a better idea of cooking. She had a better idea of she helped mom cook way more than I had. So she handled that. I remember grocery shopping though, like just being like, I don't even know.
Where do you start?
What do we need? Like, oh yeah. And just crying, like, what would mom look? What would we, and heavy, like, I remember every decision feeling so important. Like, I can't screw this up. I can't waste dad's money. I can't, we didn't have a lot of money. So he was always like, you stick to the budget. Well, I don't even know what a fucking budget is. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, that was really hard. Even putting fuel in the truck. Like, I drove to town a lot because whether there was after school or we were late, like we didn't cope. It was awful. I didn't sleep. How do you get up and get on the bus? So all of that was just, it was hard. I remember often dropping them off at school and then not going myself. Going and driving around and crying for hours. Yeah, I would come back at lunch and maybe go to school for the afternoon. I don't know how we graduated. I don't know how. I don't remember any of that part of it. I didn't do any homework. I don't remember when I did homework.
I think some parts of our brain just allow, it's incredible what we can actually do on autopilot without realizing it at times, And so if we fast forward a little bit, because there was these difficult years, and maybe 10 years kind of goes by, and you and your sister start having these conversations about having a business together.
You know what? We were 8 and 6. And we were going to have a business together.
Okay. So this didn't start in your 20s. It started.
It didn't. And I don't know why. I don't know what we were going to do. I remember doing an assignment in grade 6 with my best friend. And it was, you had to run a store, and we were going to pick a clothing store, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
Best clothing in our store. And we were, and I remember being like, oh yeah, Courtney's right. We could totally, my sister is the tenacious one. She's the
Yeah.
one, she knows what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and what the outcome's going to be. And I am far more cautious. I am far more overthinker, like doomsday. She's the sunshine and rainbows, thank God. And I was not. And to this day, I'm not. I still really struggle with, okay, but what about this? And what about that? And that's something I have to work through every day for sure.
I think that makes a nice balance though.
It was a good balance. It turned out to be a great balance for sure. She's pulled me along and I've pulled her along when needed to. And so she worked, I was here in Red Deer, did a little bouncing around, but I moved to Red Deer because I found a work here. I hated being up north. I did have friends, good friends, and I still have lots of good friends from up there. But I didn't like any of the things it stood for our family.
Right.
Coming back down here felt like I was coming home, and it was just more positive for me. It was healthier interactions. It just felt better. And that was hard to leave Mike because I didn't know he was going to follow me. I was like, I'm out. So,
right.
yeah, I can't. It's toxic. It was toxic. And being in the oil field was toxic, right?
Yeah.
All of our friends were, and we had good friends. They were good people, but it was still too much drinking. And it was still all of that yuck that I just was like, I just don't want to be something's got to be better. There's a whole wide world out there. Something's got to be better. And I can't fly too far because my family's close. I can't go too far. So, moved to Red Deer, started working in an accounting firm, and Courtney had been here. She went to school at Olds College and took floral decor. So we were here together for a little while there, and I loved that. I'm like, this is so cool that we're now in Red Deer together. And Mike was now here.
Yeah.
And she ended up going back to Grand Prairie because she just couldn't. It's hard, single girl in town, and trying to pay rent and all those things. She ended up getting a great opportunity. She had worked at La Senza in Grand Prairie Mall for a year or a couple years and ended up sort of having managerial duties there. And I remember her thinking, so bra shopping after my mom died was like awful. So Courtney barely remembers bra shopping with mom. I remember my first few times we would go together, but so I remember Dad, we were like, well, we need to go shopping, and what do you need? And well, we kind of need underwear, and he'd just throw money, and I don't know, what does that cost? I don't even know what it costs. Like, I don't even know. So he'd throw some money at us and, okay, do what you need to do. And we'd go in and we'd be like if this would be so much easier with our mom, how do people do this? And it turned out when she started working in La Senza that nobody knows how to bra shop. Nobody knows. She's like, I'm 19 years old. And people are coming to me at this mall store for advice. And I don't know anything about how, like, I can sell you these products, but I don't know how do women not know what they need in a bra? Like, I remember her being like, this is crazy. This mad. Like, this is stupid. So anyways, floral decor. She ended up back in Grand Prairie at a boutique. And she went there because they had a small floral department, and she went in to do that. And it was kind of a home decor, lots of home decor things. And then at the back in one room on the one far wall was floor to ceiling bras. And I think they sold Prima Donna. I think that was the brand they sold. So pricey. It's a more higher end.
Yeah.
And she was like, holy cow, people are coming from Grand Prairie, like surrounding area. It's everything north of Edmonton to north of Peace River. It's huge. And she was like, this is crazy. People come from miles around, and they will, like, they're spending $200 on some of these bras. And so then she got fit advice, and she learned more about how that went. And she's like, this is it, this is where we need to be. So she had an opportunity to purchase that business. And Courtney's budget. Nope, not doing it. I don't want all this inventory. I don't want all this crap. But she said to me, we could do this. We could totally do this. And I'm like, well, let's try, but I'm not quitting my job quite yet. So so she did all the work, and I give her so much credit. I was such a naysayer. That was not a naysayer to her. I never said you'll never do this, but I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know. This is all way too overwhelming for me. I have such an ADD brain. I struggle once I'm a little too overwhelmed. It's like, I can't connect any dots. This is all very hard for me. So I'm suddenly panicking. My computer was supposed to be charging, and it's not.
Oh,
So we'll see how that goes.
We'll see how that goes.
Anyways, so she came down, she made appointments with realtors, she looked at spaces. I continued going to my job. We got her first space opened. It was like this 600 square feet in the lower level of a building downtown. It was like people were sure there's going to be a mass murderer down there. I'm
Right.
sure collecting bodies because it
Drug
was
dealers in the alley or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But Courtney's like, no, we got to start somewhere. And I'm like, no, you need to spend way more money and get a better location. Like you're not. And she's like, no, there's no extra money. This is what we're doing. I'm figuring this out. So, open that little space. And I think I quit my job within a month of that.
Yeah.
And then I was going to do our books from home. She didn't really need any help yet because we obviously weren't busy. So I was doing a lot of our books from home and I had taken on a couple other bookkeeping clients. And it wasn't long before I was there working with her. We had got a little office space set up so I could do the stuff there. And then I think we were 9 months, open 8 or 9 months. And she'd reached like $95,000 in gross sales. And I'm like, well, I guess we could probably incorporate. Let's do it. So we incorporated in October 97. And 2007, 10 years after Mom died. 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it's been 15 years going strong.
I mean, I think there's been 2 Alberta recessions and a global pandemic in that time. So
you're still here though.
It's crazy. I think there's something I used to think that, you have to be the best marketer, right? You got to have the best products. You got to have the loudest voice. We have to be connected. Like, how are people going to know about us? And we have no money. Like we started on bare bones. We each got a little bit of money from an inheritance. And I bought my house. Our first house we put into that. Courtney took out her first loan for the business with hers, and Cody put himself through university with his. And but there wasn't much more from that. After Courtney invested, we got a bit of a loan to match her deposit, and we made it work. We didn't take any money out. We got radio ads. It was one of the first things we did, and that has been the strongest method of our advertising for us since day one. Has been radio. It's been so good for us. And so we were open Tuesday to Saturday, and then Mondays and Sundays and Mondays we would pack up our vehicle. All the bras would go into suitcases, and we went around central Alberta. We did Curves. We would go to Curves gyms, arrange Curves gyms, and we'd book appointments all day long.
No way.
Oh my God. For 2 years, I think we did that for. It was stupid. And it was great.
That's great marketing.
It was the only way to do it. We had no money. We could put money in, we could put gas in and go and make collaborations that way. But it was really hard to figure it out. But it was great because that's your connection. So now we've met these 2 girls, and like 25 slinging bras out of the back of our car. That's how people are going to think we are nuts. This is terrible. But no, they came, and then they would come to Red Deer and they would seek us out. And I just had a customer again today. She went, I've been shopping with you since the first building, that lower level. And I was like, oh my God. I'm just so proud of what you guys do. And it's just neat. We've had these women that have shopped with us for years. And I mean, I don't even think we knew the gravity of the impact of it. Like we realized, okay, we were giving a service of making sure the bras fit properly. And the bras were better quality, but there was a very much like, so your total is $462. And they'd be like, yeah, no problem. And we'd be like, whoa, she was okay with that. Because we were kids. I'd never spent that kind of money. I didn't know, but the value, we had to teach ourselves
the value of this,
you know, and it was just fascinating. And we screwed up so many times and messed up a few fits and had mad clients, but that was all part of the growing of it. And we were always very like, listen, we were very, we were pretty good at eating our humble pie. Like we were never, we probably took bras back. We should have never, like, as just to make her up, not to make her up more upset. You just figure it out. But I think that's where we started realizing our mom deserved a service like this, right? Our women deserve a service like this. They deserve to come to a place. And since then we've realized like there's so many traumas in a woman's life, right? Losses of pregnancies, losses of children, losses of family members, divorces, abuse. And a lot of that stuff comes out in our fitting room. And I don't think we realized how heavy sometimes those fittings would be. But to ask someone to take off their shirt and go down to their bra and let us measure, which it was very hard. Lots of women were like, no, you can't. And well, it was really a matter of building trust and being really humble and just, this is a service I'd love to offer you. And, if you'll give me a chance, I think I could do a good job, but I don't want to make any promises because I don't want your hopes to be up too high. Like it was just,
but it's a very like intimate bonding experience. And so, you're doing far more than just, slinging bras. You're creating this, I think, just this incredible experience and connection. And it's probably why you have such loyalty now. And, I love when business is more like, obviously we're in business to earn a living. I do the same thing. But, I always find myself joking sometimes. This is just the cover story. Like, yes, we do this to make a living, but there's more to what it is that we do. And it's why we do it. Because I think, how many times have you thought, like, probably just be easier to fold this up and get a job somewhere?
More times than I would be comfortable admitting. Like there was so many times where I'm like, Courtney, this is crazy. Like we're working so hard and we have to, and even like owning a business, you have to develop everything from scratch, right?
Yeah.
Everything from scratch. And you're constantly crossing that out and redoing it. And every time we had to try again, for a while, it was like, so P.S. I also got pregnant then 18 months into having the business. So I immediately just did all let's have a family too. Let's just do it all.
Yeah.
So that was really hard. There's no mat leave. We were
right.
No, we had to be, my first daughter we had a traumatic delivery and she was a code blue. And so we ended up in the special care nursery for, 4 or 5 days. And I remember I did leave work alone for those. I was not thinking of work, but when it was payroll, like not long after that. And by the time you're home, you're right back in it. My first baby, I was home a lot. We had an employee by then. So I was home with my daughter a lot. But fast forward I don't know how many years. Well, I'd have to do more math. I got pregnant at the same time for my second. And so our daughters are 7 weeks apart. And I remember going, oh, nice. That's quite a gift you're giving us right now when you're not even here to help us out with it. And now we're going to have babies at the same time. How in the hell are we going to do this? Like,
right.
Oh my God, what is happening? And now, those babies are 8.5. They're best friends. They grew up as twins. We were often nursing in the back room, and one would be out bra fitting, and the other one, we often nursed each other's babies. Like it was zero shame. No, this is the shit that needs to get done. It was amazing. It was amazing. And in the thick of it, hard, awful, blah. And now I'm like, I'm so proud of us. I can't believe we did that stuff. And even with kids, this is they've grown up in this space. They've seen their moms do this from day one. And our customers are always like, oh, are your kids here? Lots of times they're like, have we haven't seen pictures of the kids. And it's just really a cool, I think getting pregnant with Maddie, my first child, I remember being like, oh my gosh, now I'm more relatable. Right now I have this, I understand what pregnancy feels like. And this is so valuable in our business. And now I'm nursing and I understand now. And so now when people can say, oh, I've put on weight. Yeah, I totally get it. Like I remember being excited with every little life experience because you're like, oh my God, now I can relate to people better and I can share things with them more. And who knew?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think this is why, your business has such staying power, really, is because you're more than a business, right? You're a community providing like just an invaluable life experience for people, a place, where women can just, I remember when my wife was pregnant and I brought her in and I was like, just take good care of her. But I knew, like, I was like, there's no hesitation here. Right. And to this day, she still enjoys those bras. And it's not that it's only like a year ago. They're pretty durable.
But it matters. And I think we see so many women that come to our door really jaded. Like I've had awful experiences. I am unfittable. I have a weird body. I am a size you'll never be able to help me. But they show up, and at first it was like, holy, that's a lot of pressure, right? You really want to nail it, because again, it's intimate. If I give you, I think women are pretty, especially with mass produced crappy products. People are really used to spending money and getting nothing, right? They're really, and so they're like, oh, so now I'm going to spend 3 times what I spent before. And I'm going to trust this 25-year-old girl to sell me. Courtney was 23 when we started our store. I'm going to trust these young, I remember how many times getting looked up and down. Well, what do you know about it? And being like, I can try though. Like, the last lady I just fit, she was like, she had this struggle, and, and so with every day and every positive interaction, there were way more positive than negatives. And we were like, okay, so we're onto something. But the industry changes, right? Hardships. We got into mastectomy products and post-surgical products and swimwear and even underwear. My gosh, like there's so many people struggle, and you're asking for a little more money for your garments, but then there's a weight loss or a weight gain, and they're irritated. They don't want to spend this money again. But more times than not, they were like, this is unbelievable. You've changed my life. I can chase my kids around, or I'm at work and I really want to feel secure at work. I work with a bunch of men and I don't want attention, or women who
feel
were
comfortable
really
and confident.
And just felt like they would never get it. Their backs were in lots of pain, and there's just, and then they start coming to us with these issues, and we're like, holy cow, how are we going to be able to do anything about this? This is so heavy. But
you figure it out.
We did. We figured it out. Yeah.
And there's no, like, you can't read a book about this stuff.
No.
Right? Like the only way you get to where you are now is just by putting in the hard yards, and and I just wonder, like, kind of going back to your story, like how many times have you and Courtney just had conversations about your mom and what she must be thinking, sort of looking down and,
every day.
Yeah. Right.
Every day.
Just this guiding, like shaping really what you do, like her influence, is carried on years and years after the fact. Really, you're a living legacy for her.
Well, and she was so goofy, but she was so warm. She was so loving. She was so, she made a friend everywhere, right? But she was feisty, and she was, stuck in her ways and had no problem being like, that's not going to work for me. And I wish I'd been able to see more of that, because at 15, I hadn't seen her, struggle in front of me a lot, right? I hadn't seen her have adult conversations in front of me or have to come up with adult solutions for problems. I didn't get to see any of that. So all of it was, what do you think mom would think? What would mom would do? And it was a lot of, I really quickly learned. So in those years, especially right in Grand Prairie, those years right after, moving out, I remember being so depressed. I was on antidepressants for a while. I left a job that it was toxic. I was so unhappy there. And left my job that I had been, went to college for. And I went working at the Keg. And I had been a waitress for a little while, but I was not a great waitress.
Right.
And the Keg was like a level up, right? The Keg's the Keg.
Right. Yeah.
And this looks like a really cool environment. And I want to be confident. I want to do really great things. So I'm going to work, I'm going to hustle. I'm going to figure this out. So the Keg had this hiring experience where
you got heart from Lindsay here too. So
thanks, love. Oh, that's sweet. I had to do an interview process.
Right.
And I was not like, what? Oh my God. And it was one of those things. Well, what do I have to lose? I'm going to do it. I'm just going to be myself and do it. And it was me out of 15, 20 people. It was me and a guy chosen, and I got this job. And that was like, holy, awesome. Okay. Maybe I can do this. I ended up working at the Keg for just over a year, full time. I moved from the restaurant down to the lounge. Our lounge was in a lower level, and I ended up being their main opener. The opener was like 3 p.m. You were there to open the bar, and you worked till the latest shift. So I ended up running, like taking on the biggest shift, made great money. I felt super powerful. That was like a place where I was like, okay, that sort of opened the doors to. So I started working out, and I started, I didn't want to go anywhere with well, where would you go? Would you come with me? That's always how I was. And I'm like, no, I need to do this. Mike worked away. He was at oil field. So he was gone all the time. And I didn't have a lot of close friends, and we were all 20. So even if I had the friends, they were all busy. Everyone's learning how to live their life at 20.
Right,
so, that was the first, I started being like, okay, positive. What was my best takeaway from today? Okay, that feels okay. Okay. So I remember going to bed at night. There was times when I would just be so depressed and just find that one good thing. Okay, what's that one good thing? And I started being really aware. And it's funny now, 20 years later, it's weird how I read all like The Secret, right? You read that story of The Secret and manifestation and elevating your vibrations and all these things. And none of those words were a thing when I was a kid, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
But I started learning that, okay, if I find that one good thing and let my heart feel good, then that's enough for today. That's what I'm going to do. And then the next day, what's my one good thing? What's my one good thing? And those good days would start being, there were more good things each day, right? There were more good things to celebrate. And the more I did by myself, I was the only one that could take credit for that. I was like, okay, then I did the damn thing. And I got this place. And that was sort of what started helping me be more brave. And that mattered once we got here, because entrepreneurship, that's all it is, right? I had to be really brave every step. Are we frozen, John?
This is one of those fun things when you do a live and your internet has a bit of a hiccup. That was on my end there. So
was that you?
That was me. Yeah. But Lindsay says you're beautiful inside and out, and thank you so much, Lindsay. And Shelly says
that's
so
my auntie.
Proud of you as well. So so you've got lots of supporters here as well. Like, it's just I think that's quite something. And you kind of already addressing one of the last things I wanted to touch on was really like, how did you like dig yourself out of this? And I think you're kind of describing that, because really, in one sense, this is a heartbreaking story. I mean, I had some tears as you're describing it too, just because I can feel it, like as you're describing it. But on the same token, there's also a story of hope in here, right? That this wasn't the end of the road for you, and that one way or another, there's a strength and a resilience and
Oh, I've lost you.
I'm gonna have to have a word with Telus.
Oh my gosh, though. We know what East Red Deer internet is like. Jeez. Terrible.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to have a word with Telus. Right at the heart of things. As we're, but really, so you found a way to dig yourself out and actually to thrive. Not just sort of exist in life, but to really make the most, like chase your dreams. You've got a beautiful family. You've got an amazing husband who's been with you, by your side for. I'm trying to think. I think I might have met him once, maybe at one of the shows you were at, maybe at the Westerner or something.
You have. Yeah, I'm sure you have met him once.
Anyways, I feel like he just deserves major props for being just an awesome human being. I think he might have been tuning in. So, Mike, if you are tuning in, major props just for being an awesome human being. That's awesome. And so, really, it was this looking for the bright spot, that kind of helped you to find your way out. And nobody really told you to do this. Is this something that just kind of came from within?
It was honestly just, literally the worst day of my life, someone died, right? I can't, not to say that I considered suicide, but not being alive on really hard days was something I would think about. There's no doubt. And I mean, what would that do? What would that do to my brother and sister? What would that do to my dad? What would that do to our family? No, that's not the solution. So I have to figure out, I don't want to live with this awful sadness in my heart. So I got to figure it out. And I was bitter. Like, there was a lot of bitterness. I didn't want to have to do it. But when I started feeling that physical, that physical yes and no, that physical, do you need it or don't you? What makes your heart soar? What makes you feel good? I started really tuning into my body and being like, hey, that's all I can do is trust myself. All I have is myself. And all I can do is take it one step at a time and figure it out. And I started realizing how much my mom, her wisdom lived on, right? I could really think about what would she do. Well, I think she would do this, and I can't talk to her about it, but I feel in my heart this is a choice she would make. So it was really just, it was tuning in. It was just tuning in. It was, and then as I grew and started to understand that a little better, I would start finding books, and I would start, one of my favorite books was The Celestine Prophecy. Have you read that?
I have not. I'll have
Oh
to add it
my
to my very
goodness.
long reading list.
I'm going to throw that. I'm going to shout out to my buddy Dan. Danny is one of our best friends, and I have to share this with him. He shared that book with me when I was about 21, and I cherished that. And it's about, you are exactly where you need to be. You have to follow. It's a little more hippy dippy than, a little more voodoo than that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was about, one thing leads you to the next thing, and when you're on the right path, you have to just start taking those steps and figuring it out. And that was one of the books that really changed my life and made me go, okay, I'm gonna listen to the feels, I'm gonna listen to my intuition, and I'm going to make my decisions that way. And to this day, that's still our process. It is so much easier to listen to my intuition than it is to listen to any outside sources. I don't even call my friends when I have a thing. Hey, can we talk about this? I do not. I talk to my sister, I talk to my hubby, but I don't go outside of that. John, where are you?
And I feel like everyone's like hammering on Netflix or something like that and just totally crushing the bandwidth that we have in East Red Deer right now. So, but yeah, really, so we'll have to wind up and do this again, but because and I'll have to edit these last few minutes for the actual podcast. But really, just like tuning in and listening to what does your intuition say. And intuition is such an interesting thing when we think about it, because yeah, well, that's a good shot right there.
Sorry, I was going to try to plug my computer in a different way, but it's still, I don't know what's wrong with this outlet. Whatever.
That's the joy of doing. That's the risk and the joy of doing things live. But so why don't we take it home with just some advice? You've been through a lot. You come out the other side of it. Obviously your journey still continues, but like you're in a really, really great place after going through all the things you've gone through. I say I've never met a remarkable person who had an easy life. And in my eyes, you are a remarkable human being. And of course, it's a very pleasure. It's my pleasure to know you, to call you a friend. And you're even really kind of a neighbor, just another sort of around the corner from me in the suburb here.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So if you were to offer just some thoughts for, someone to kind of take home, maybe they're not quite where you are in their journey. They're still in the dark place trying to dig their way out. And what would you share with them to kind of encourage them?
I think I dealt with a lot of guilt, right? I dealt with a lot of, like, when I after mom died, it was always about, oh, I should have been better. I should have done this more. I should have been this more. And then even through those years of, I could have done that better. I should have been better at school. Like, I started realizing that I could only do so many hard things at once. So some things had to take a back seat. And even things from before mom died, just so many little things that just have become part of my journey. And something I sort of had to settle into and become comfortable with was that every decision we made, or I made up till now, I made with, at the highest level of awareness that I could have at the time. And every hard thing you do just helps you figure out what that next hard thing is. My daughter, my 13-year-old, just got braces, and it's been hard. She's got appliance on the top and braces on the bottom for now. And that it hasn't even been a week, and she's starving to death, and she's sore, and she's like, this is a stupid, why would I realize, and as much as I never want to say to her, life is hard. It's always hard.
Right.
But, you're going to prove to yourself that this investment of your time and your discomfort, you're going to be so proud of the result, that you're going to be so glad you do this. She has she's got rough situation in her mouth, and it's everything's sore all the time, and she's got huge teeth, and she's had 5 or 6 taken out already just because there's just not enough room in there. And this is a privilege that we are honored and lucky to have that we can do this for you. And you can complain, but you have to start learning how to dust yourself off. You have to start recognizing that this matters. It's an investment into your future, and it's not forever. And I think that I watched this really great, I think it was, oh gosh, never mind. I won't even start saying, I can't remember which actor said it. He said, I wish someone had told me more that this too will pass, right? And in every way, this too hard things will pass. This too successful things will pass. This too, there's a yin to every yang, and it can
it's
go
like this law of impermanence, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad situation. Like, that's okay. Hard things will pass and great things will pass. And there will always be something around the corner. And as long as you're safe and healthy and with the people who love you the most, you know, you'll get through this. And it's a really small way for Maddie and her braces. It's a small thing right now, but it's just hard things are going to happen, and we're going to get you through it together, baby.
It's good. It's good character building. I had 2.5 years of braces followed by jaw surgery. And yeah, that was brutal. I have screws and I can still feel them, you know.
Do you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Next time we see, I'll the screws and plates in there. Yeah. So, but you know, I'm so glad that I did it, because back, like, I couldn't just have my teeth straightened. I actually had to have my jaws entirely realigned. But they said, you know, if you don't do this by the time you're 30, I'm already 40 now, but by the time you're 30, your teeth will grind down to almost nothing because of the way they're lined up. And it was like, oof, you know. And so, but when you're 13 and this is, you know, you have a very narrow window of perspective on life at that point in time. It's like, you know what, you know, we're just gonna have to help you tough through this. So, well, despite the tech hiccups and some of the interruptions here, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I feel like I've just gotten to know you a little bit better. And I just appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable, to share your story, be very real. And I know a lot of people are going to be touched because of this. And so I'm just so appreciative that you took the time today to join me for this episode.
Well, we talked about this earlier, and how sometimes there's days when I'm like not interested in being vulnerable. There's days when it's just like, I just don't feel like sharing this story today. But I knew we've been talking about this for a long time, and I knew that this was, I got to do one with Nikki. She and I got to do this again. Nikki, I'm thinking of you. But I knew you're safe. You're a safe place for me. I really appreciate our conversations. You and I've always had really beautiful, soulful conversations. So this was not, I'm happy to do this. I'm grateful for the opportunity for it. I haven't had that conversation in a while. So I appreciate being able to talk about her and share that part of my life.
I think, and just to honor her memory. So yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become. And I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.